Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Hey, I'm John, and this is...
Alton, here I am. What up?
Oh, man, already starting off good. That's for sure. Hey,
how we roll.
So today's topic is going to be a fun one for us, I think. It's should we dismantle all victimless crimes? And I think that actually has a lot to play in what's going on in today's world, wouldn't you say?
For sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of applications that we can bring out and discuss and upset half of the people that listen, so should be fun.
Yeah. It's it's one of those weeks where we're starting to find out that schools are going to get shut down for a little bit longer, and there's still havoc out in the world. And oh man, CDC's changing their mind constantly on things, and I'm getting a little annoyed. We actually had a scare though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So my oldest daughter, she actually started developing headaches and things like that. And it sucks because, it's not this fear in me, but it's like I know everybody that's ever hung with us, even you, right? Because they come here and they hang with your kids. And it's like automatically we now associate headaches or stomach issues to be related to COVID.
Yeah.
So it was like my first thing was, okay, well, now I got to go get her tested, which luckily I found a free one. Otherwise, it was going to cost like $500 through Obamacare.
Really?
$500. Because they tag you with $200 for the test, and then they hit you with another, $250, $300 for the lab work later on.
Wow.
Is what one of the health people told me when I was searching it.
So this COVID-19 thing might be a big revenue generator for somebody.
It could be.
$500 a pop.
Yeah.
That's pretty substantial.
My whole thing
Somebody's got to be paying for the testing.
Yeah.
Right?
So she kept fearing, though, that they were going to shove that thing all the way down her nose and everything and hurt her. And I'm just like, I don't understand why they would do that. If you can cough and give it to somebody, why wouldn't you simply just swab your mouth or something? Anywho, It turned out to be a mouth swab, and we found a free place due to the county was doing it. So we both got tested, and results came back fast. We were both negative. Turns out hers was other issues,
other problems.
So I wouldn't say it was a scare for me, but it really gave light to, wow, so we're really going to associate Corona with any bad feeling that you might have.
Yeah. Well, it's because it affects everybody differently, right? And I think that's the world that we're living in right now, is that there's a lot of unknowns. Mm-hmm. And I think some people may be claiming to know everything, but the reality is we don't. The symptoms are different and everything. And I think that that's okay to say that we don't know everything. We don't have to know everything. To me, that's just not that scary. But I think for some people it is.
Nice. So let me set the stage. Victimless crimes, there's two different statistics because I've got some from back in 2006 and then 2017.
Okay.
I don't have today's because they don't have the statistics built up from last year on the FBI site. So this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is as a popular topic as it should be.
No.
I mean, when I first kind of got the idea about a victimless crime, it was like this aha moment for me. Like, oh yeah, what is a victimless crime, really?
Right.
And what are the penalties for it? So yeah, bring those stats out and just real quick before you bring those stats, John, like what is a victimless crime? Like what are we talking about here? And how are we categorizing the stats that you're going to read to us?
So victimless crime is basically just any action that's considered a crime, but yet there's no victim. All that's taking place is the person committing the crime can only affect themselves.
So then when you say committing the crime, you mean there is a law in place that is being broken.
Right.
Right? So not me punching you in the nose
Right, because
Right.
then I would be the victim. Unless I
be
was
the
stupid
victim.
enough to say, hey, you can go ahead and punch me in the face.
Right. But let's say that I'm driving in my car and I'm not wearing my seatbelt.
Right.
That might be an example of I could get in trouble for that. I broke the law, but no one's
hurt in that situation.
hurt, right? It's just like me in my car.
Right. And then even if you did get in a wreck and you weren't wearing your seatbelt, you're the one that's getting hurt and no one else is.
Unless I like fly through the windshield as a hurling projectile and take somebody out.
Yeah, then that would be a different story. But
Okay, so anyway, stats. I got distracted.
so 2006, there were two statistics that I got. One stated that in the actual federal prisons out of men, there was 86% were in there due to victimless crimes. Now it's very particular, right? It's
Wait, how many?
86%.
86.
of
That
all-
can't be right.
Of all men that were in federal prison. We're not talking overall. We're just talking federal prison and men. 86% were in for victimless crimes.
That's insane.
Ridiculous. So then let's look at the whole source of 2006.
Man, I didn't even hear that when you said that. That's just really
That's
got
'cause-
my attention.
That's because you're ADHD and you haven't been diagnosed properly.
86%.
Yeah.
That's over 8 out of 10. That means only 2 out of 10 people, not even 2 out of 10 people, broke a law that did not impact someone else.
Yeah.
And they're in prison, federal prison for it.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that stat?
Oh, probably CNN or something. Sorry.
The internet's.
Yeah. No, it was all over the internet. In fact, there's several sources that actually talked about this 86%.
Okay, so then we should post that, right?
I can.
Anyway, all right, go ahead. Sorry.
So then let's look at the actual overall prisons. Out of that, there was 34% of all prisoners in the U.S. were in due to victimless crimes. Now, it was 2006. 2017, slightly different story, right? It was 22% of all arrests were victimless crimes in 2017.
In 2017, we're talking about arrests or people that are in prison?
It defined it on the FBI site as arrests.
Arrests. Okay, well, that's different, right? That's
Well, I mean, so you have prison and then you have parole, or people that were just deemed innocent, right?
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I punched you in the nose, they may come and arrest me, but I may not go to jail for it,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Or you could have punched yourself in the nose and called the cops, and then they come and arrest me, and then I'm, is it exonerated? I'm let go. I'm proven innocent, right? Because somebody had the
Expunged.
camera and saw you punch yourself in the face, and now I'm free, but I was still arrested for that. So
Yeah.
arrest is different than being proven guilty and sentenced, I think.
True.
And I think it's good to note, but still.
Well, yeah. I mean, because if you think about it, gambling is technically a Class C misdemeanor.
In Texas or
In Texas.
Las Vegas?
No, yeah, there's some states that allow it. But in Texas, Class C, it's punishable up to a fine, I think, of $1,000. And you could do very little time, but
Generally not.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's probably up to a
that's
judge.
like a seatbelt violation is
Yeah.
also a Class C. So,
Yeah.
Now, I think it would be good. Let's mention, in fact, let's just go over them. What are the different types of victimless crimes? So some of the list that I've got is gambling, drugs, and they actually listed as at home because if you're out in public, I guess that would be, you could be affecting all the others around you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. Secondhand smoke or anything. Like, I don't want to see you shooting heroin on the street.
Right.
I haven't
Needles
walked
on
by
the
the
ground
kid,
that kids will pick up, things like that. Seatbelts, helmets, since you like to ride your motorcycles all the time.
And just to be clear, I think it's completely ridiculous that there are helmet laws. Like, can't we just let people ride their motorcycle 150 miles an hour without one? I mean, anyway, if you were wondering where I stood on this. I mean, and I'll be the first one to come up and smack you upside the head and be like, dude, put your helmet on.
Right.
Like literally I've done it. When I was riding my motorcycle, I'm all geared up. And when I saw these guys riding in flip flops and shorts and no gloves,
Yeah.
I'd tell them straight up. I'd say, hey man, you're doing 60 miles an hour down a road, which is totally normal for a motorcycle to do. I'm like, do you know what a cheese grater looks like over your skin? Because that's what that pavement is. And you don't even have any gloves. Like, you're going to lose your toes, man.
So you'll wear everything, but you still think it's okay for them to choose, is what you're saying?
That's definitely what I'm saying. Okay. And just to be clear, since we're talking about helmets, story, and I think I've shared this. Did I share this? That I got pulled over by the cops, by like 3 cops?
No.
It was like midnight. I used to work second shift, and I had my crotch rocket. And I always wore leather jacket with hard plastic pads, like racing gloves, jeans, and then steel toe boots. So helmet, jacket, gloves, like everything except jeans. I mean, was padded and leathered and whatever. I got pulled over one night because my visor was open.
What?
Did I not tell this story? Okay, yeah. So
the visor was open and they pulled you over?
Full-faced helmet, not like a little... this is racing, like crotch rocket style MotoGP racing helmet. The visor's up. So like sometimes when it's really humid and you're breathing in there, it'll just fog up, right? So you got to crack the visor. I was pulled over by an Austin police officer, and it was not my first time to be pulled over, and I know the drill, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull it. So I pulled in. It just happened to be a liquor store over there. I pull in, put my bike right up to the facing the liquor store at one of the little curbs, right, that you would pull your car up to. Turn off the keys, put my hands up. 2 other cop cars come cruising in there, and I'm like, hey, why'd you pull me over? Oh, we'll ask the questions here. Anyway, turns out he's like, yeah, you didn't have on any eye protection. I said, dude, I've got a full face helmet. Yeah, that's true, but your visor was up. It has to be down. City ordinance. And
ordinance.
I looked at him and I was just, the satire, the sarcasm was just ready to flow. And I think he could see it in my face because I'm like, Alton, there's 3 cop cars here. Shut your mouth. Like, this could be a bad night. And after he checked my insurance and I was all legit, and he's like, oh, yeah, I know it's kind of silly, but, we just got to, and then they're all gone. And I was just like,
what's the justification? You're going to get a bug in your eye and crash?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like legitimately what he said. And I was just staring at him with all the sarcasm that I had without opening my mouth because...
Now, when you're riding your crotch rocket, they still have visors on them that project the wind up and over you, right? So what's the likelihood of you really getting a bug in your face?
Oh, it's really likely. I've swallowed them.
Okay.
I've had them hit me in the face.
You've swallowed them?
Yeah.
So you're a bug eater?
Not on purpose, but...
So you could go on Survivor.
Like you could get ramrodded right down your throat at 75 miles an hour. June bug. Oh, whoops. Well.
Wow. Did you end up choking or how'd that work out? I'd have thrown up. I think it would have just been like.
It just happens. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but let's be real. Why would you have that ordinance? It's so you can pull me over, harass me, and see if there's something else wrong. Again, oh, you were riding without insurance. Anyway, sorry, I'm full of interruptions today, but that was a good story. And this is why this thing gets me fired up. It's because what the crap, that's the society that you're living in.
Man. So, where were we at? Helmets, and then prostitution's another one. Curfew violations. There were a lot of arrests. Oh, thousands of arrests in 2017.
Stop it. Talk about 2020.
Oh, man. I mean,
this is going to hurt. John.
Yeah. So then speeding.
Who picked this topic?
No, I don't know. I think we just spun a wheel. But speeding was actually listed in one of them, and I don't fully agree with that being a victimless crime because speeding does tend to lead to wrecks, especially when weather's changing, right? So
This is a tough one for me.
I'd put an asterisk on that. But
Let's say that though. Let's say, because I know I'm saying that in general, I'm not a fan of having laws for what we're calling victimless crimes, but I'm 100% want to say that there's some real gray areas here that I don't know if I have just like a really good canned answer, but a seatbelt, I don't want to hear it. Like, seatbelt to me is pretty cut and dry. Like speeding, that's a harder one for me. Like, I'm in agreement if you're going faster and it starts raining, but also like, well, anyway, there's just gray areas, right? Yeah. Like even what was the other one you told, did you say like drugs in public? So public intoxication.
Yeah. Public intoxication's actually on here,
but a victimless crime.
Yeah. But here's the problem I have. So there's an asterisk on that one as well, because if you look at the Texas law, you can't just be drunk in public and get arrested. No, you have to be a danger to yourself or to others.
Yeah, so you got to be causing a scene. They're acting a fool. And how else are they going to know?
Like walking in the middle of the street. I mean, that's not a victimless crime at that point, right?
Well, you might be the victim because I might just run you over.
But I'm going to put a dent in your car, or you're going to fly off your motorcycle. Talk about getting a bug in your mouth. You're going to have a whole body in your mouth. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so what we're saying is that we're acknowledging that some of this isn't so cut and dry.
Right.
But it's worth looking into and thinking into where do you stand on some of these, and to me, like, why were these laws put in place?
Yeah. So there were two more items that were on my list that I found. One was a suicide, which obviously the only victim is the person doing it.
Well, that's not true.
What do you mean? Well, you're talking like sadness from the family and everything?
Well, if you commit suicide, John, how am I going to do my podcast and make my millions?
Okay, well then I guess you'll have to take me to a small claims court or something.
I want a piece of that. Oh, you don't even get life insurance, but maybe that's why it's a crime.
Actually, in the state of Texas, you can get life insurance after, I want to say it was 2 years.
You mean if you have a policy for 2 years?
If you have a policy prior to you committing suicide for 2 years, you can still collect. I'm pretty sure it's 2 years, but I do know you can still collect in Texas on life insurance policy for suicide. Not that we're going to convince anybody to do this, so please don't take that the wrong way.
No, we're not. Yeah, we're talking about victimless crimes. Suicide, that's a tougher one for me. That is nothing like seatbelts. But what are you going to do? I mean, who gets the fine? Who goes to jail? What's the purpose of the law?
All right. So then the last one that I have was sodomy or butt sex. So
this is the one you're struggling with, clearly. Mine's the helmet laws, but...
No, so how many people, if you're listening to this, it's actually still in effect in the state of Texas. It's listed as a Class C misdemeanor, but it has been found unconstitutional and it's unenforceable, but it's still on the books. So getting married if you're homosexual in Texas is, still legal to do, but consummating your marriage is not. So, but it even goes for heterosexuals. So it's kind of like, what on earth? Like,
so I mean, we could probably pull up a lot of old laws that are still on the books. Like I know I've read some of the things of like, you can't tie up your horse on Main Street at 1 o'clock, or I forget what it is, but there's some other ones that are like still on the books.
Yeah.
That you, I guess, technically could be prosecuted for, but they're just not that relevant. So I wonder if they're just there for nostalgia.
Well, there was one that always got me was the purple paint. Did you ever hear about that one?
Well, I haven't heard about it, but I know what it, well, I think I know what you're going to say.
But I mean, the average Joe has no idea. If you see purple paint on your post or a tree at somebody's property, I mean, you don't think anything of it, right? You just think somebody spray painted it.
I know somebody's going to shoot me. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, it's do not trespass. It's like having a fence up.
Yeah.
but it's invisible.
Well, yeah. Well, but I mean,
Plus, you can't see that at night. You're not going to see purple paint
well,
on a
look,
tree.
if you're wandering around on somebody else's property,
yeah.
sorry,
I just,
you know.
but yeah, to your point, yeah, there's some laws out there. So the issue we have though, and kind of the arguments with these topics of victimless crimes is, you know, you're taking away personal freedoms and we're upholding moral standards. Who's deciding what those moral standards are? And then on top of that, you really do need to look at who's actually harmed in this.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I'm trying not to interrupt you, John.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, here's the thing for me. I like to dig into the why. Is the law there? And I think that that's the tell, you know, like with Obamacare. And we talked about this, when the law goes into effect, all of a sudden you have all of these people who are now criminals, right? So you might say, oh, the seatbelt law has been in effect as long as I've been alive. And I know I need to wear my seatbelt. Alton, wear your seatbelt. Okay, cool. Roger that. Got it. But what happens about when they make these laws where there is no victim, like the gun laws, you know? So what's happened is that if you have a gun that shoots a certain way or whatever, and then they pass this law that says, oh, you can only have 8 rounds in the magazine, and you have a magazine that holds 10, all of a sudden, now you're a criminal. Why? Because you own a piece of hardware. And that's where I think that a lot of these problems come in. And so now, because there's a piece of hardware at my house, SWAT team going to come in, kick my door down, see that I got a 10-round magazine, take my guns, you know, scare my kids, shoot me if they come in the middle of the night and I don't know who it is. And I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like, and so when I hear about these things, it's like, well, why are you passing these laws? It makes me think that you're doing this to have an edge, like for the police to have an edge over their constituents or maybe that's the wrong term, but like the governed, the people, right? So it's like, oh, I can't catch you actually doing anything wrong, but oh, you weren't wearing your seatbelt, so I'm going to pull you over. Or is it the insurance companies lobbying because people are dying and they're having to pay out stuff and they don't want to? Like, what's the why there? And I think we need to look into the why, and some of it is moral. And I think we've been clear on here that we're both Christians and not perfect, but have, like, let's call them biblical morals. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like quoting or loosely like morally. But look, I've got a problem with saying government should enforce these things, because yeah, that's great when you agree. It's like, oh yeah, I think that this is bad, but what happens when it's different than what you believe? And now there's like, oh yeah, well, let's do this. So I think that that's a slippery slope in my own head. But
I think you got to look at all these victimless crimes is they're different in every state, right? So marijuana, that's one.
Sure. Yeah.
Are we up to half the states allow it now?
I don't know,
but I mean, that's different across the board. And it's just like, well, wait a second. So based on the area you're at, they determine that it's socially acceptable, so they allow it.
But I'm all in on that.
Right.
But just saying that, like, locally, mm-hmm. we're determining it. Because if you just leave it all up to the federal government, dibs not on that one. I'm all out.
So the other argument you got to think of with all of this, though, is does it help or is it detrimental to the actual criminal justice system? Well, what's the cost effectiveness of all of this? Because you got to think.
What do you mean, the cost?
So what I mean by that is like prostitution, right? You've seen on cops where they do stings where they try to catch prostitution taking place. They're spending all this money and time and effort in doing something that minute, in my opinion, sorry, that they could be doing it on something bigger, like making sure our kids are safe and not getting kidnapped, spending more money and time on that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on these, like, lately. I don't know if it's the people that you're following, but the people that I'm following are really becoming aware of all of the missing children and, like, sex trafficking stats.
Yeah, we're getting Amber Alerts too much now.
Do not look up those stats. It will make you sick. And some of the stuff that I'm seeing is just so disheartening. So I'm glad that you brought that up, though, because I'm 100%, like, now we're talking about something serious, a real victim. And that's a big problem for me. I sat on a case. This is the only time that I've served jury duty. And for everybody out there who tries to wimp out a jury duty, you need to step up and not be a wimp about it, because we need people that have half a brain serving on the jury. And when good people try to find ways to get out of it, it's, I want you to imagine, what if you were on trial for something and smart people were backing out? It's not cool, but that's a soapbox for another day. Should I do jury duty? Mark it down. We need to do that. I sat on, like, it was insane. I sat on this case. It was a rape case for, it was an uncle and at the time a 12-year-old girl. Well, it took her, I think she was 16, 17, 18 when she finally, like, said that it happened or something. And I got chosen for the jury. Anyway, it was so horrific to sit through that case and to imagine and it wasn't just her. It turns out that this guy was, like, wrecking all the little girls in the family. And maybe not fully, but, like, this guy is twisted. And watching him in the courtroom, that really got me, when they would say the evil types of things that he was engaged in, he would sit there and smirk. And I was just like, oh man, it's everything I can do to not climb over this wall here and just make sure that
he gets what he deserves.
Yeah. And I got to be honest, that may have been the first time that I was, like, legitimately face to face exposed to evil. And I went in there like, holy cow, if we wreck this guy's life for something some little girl's saying, I don't want to live with that. And in the same token, I don't want to live with letting this guy go free. So I feel like I was as unbiased as I could. Like, the consequences here are dire.
But the evidence was there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Total evidence. We actually fully convicted, like, everybody on the jury is like, yeah, this dude did it. It's so obvious. And he got the full penalty.
Wow.
And, I mean, no remorse. He didn't even testify for himself. And he just sat there and smirked. And I'm like, man, dude. Anyway, getting a little off track, but we're not. Because that is evil. That is what I don't want to live around. That is what I want in the prison. Away from my daughter. Away from your daughter.
Right. So
that's a problem.
So why don't we take some, they talk about dismantling the police right now. Okay. Depending on your definition that they keep changing and saying, okay, let's defund certain areas and put it towards more areas, like the rape or the kidnapping or murder, assaults, things like that.
Yeah.
Don't have these cops looking for seatbelt.
Well, and that's like what the latest stat that you gave, 1 in every 5 arrests are for victimless crimes. Is that right? 22%?
Yeah.
Of arrests?
22.
So, I mean...
But then they got to go to court. They got to get convicted. Then there's probably probation.
I'm not a fan of taxes. If I haven't made that clear on the podcast, I'm not a fan.
Don't get me started on taxes, because I just found out that statistic that I sent you on taxes with churches. Did you see that?
Oh, no, man. I saw it and I thought, I don't know. Anyway,
sorry.
Taxes I'm triggered. Okay. I'm triggered. I don't want to pay for, Bob here. He's smoking pot in his house and you kick his door in, and now he's down here in the county jail and I'm paying taxes for him to sit there, watch TV, get fed. Like, let the dude just smoke pot in his house. And I'm sorry, like, I told that to one of my church friends one time and they were just floored. They're like, Alton, how can you say that? And I'm like, look, man, he's the only victim. Now, this guy that I'm on the case for, that we convicted him for raping his niece, I will write a check every month to pay to have that guy sitting in there. Yeah. And I bet a lot of other people would too.
Start GoFundMe accounts for people like that?
I'm just saying, it's that type of evil we don't want around. Are you going to write a check for me to sit in jail because I didn't wear my seatbelt? Because I didn't put on my helmet? That's where I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Because I'd rather let this guy sit in his house and smoke weed and, buy all the kids iPads at school instead of paying for this guy's food.
Well, so let me play devil's advocate, though. So I got your stance on marijuana there for a quick sec, but all the other drugs are still victimless crimes by definition. So at what point do you draw the line, and how do you draw that line? Because cocaine, meth, heroin.
Where's the victim?
Well, the victim could end up being you. And then other scholars, when you combine that or some of these other crimes, is you affect their family. Right?
So because a father is shooting up heroin, his family is the victim and we should arrest him? Or what are we saying?
I mean, that's not what I'm saying, but yes, that's what some scholars kind of make the point. Are you
saying that because someone's cracked out, they're going to break into my house at the middle of the night because they need their next fix and they're broke?
That's another part of it is, it starts out as victimless, but the problem is it may lead to all these. Yeah. Just like a stop sign. If you ran a stop sign, it's a victimless crime, but if you cause an accident, then
that's a crime.
Right. So what are you going to do? Take away stop signs and then no one follows the law?
No, you leave a stop sign, but you don't turn off your lights, park down the street and hide. And at 1:30 in the morning, when someone rolls through it, when no one's coming and it's 100% obvious, you don't go write that guy a ticket because you're bored.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Right? Like, that's the issue. Now, if I roll through that stop sign and I bang into your nice fancy car, guilty.
Yeah. Well, so the same could be said about prostitution, though. So they put prostitution in effect to keep AIDS and all these other STDs from spreading, because then it becomes non-victim.
Here's the thing. I'm not pro-prostitution, to be clear. All right? Let me give you a story. It's confession time for Alton.
Okay? All right. We're in confession.
They locked down the gyms. Okay. Mandatory mask in public and social distancing, whatever else. I don't know. I'm not paying attention because I don't care.
You've just been locked in your room.
I'm a free man. Sorry, everyone, that offends, but you can't stop me. I'm a stubborn guy. I'm going to live free or I'm going to die. Now, they shut down the gyms, okay? What do you think I just quit doing jiu-jitsu for forever? How long do you think that lasted?
You looked around until you found something that fit your profile, right?
So it turns out that you're not going to stop me from doing jiu-jitsu. I'm going to find a way. Now, you can make it illegal. And when me and my buddies are rolling in the grass out back, not social distancing, sweating on each other, and the cops are going to come, like, let's say now my neighbor reports it. Hey, these guys, they're rolling around. There are 11 guys out there and they're just sweating all over each other. I think I even saw a couple of them like rub their faces on each other. They are not social distancing. They don't have on masks. They call the cops. Cops come, bashing in my back door and arrest us all because we were doing jiu-jitsu because somebody, pencil whipped some order in.
Yeah.
So point being is That's my contention with the drugs. I would love to imagine, or prostitution. Like, do you really think that the laws are stopping people from prostituting?
Well,
or getting prostitutes?
so you think the mask situation would be considered a victimless crime too?
Me? 100%. But I think a lot of people are, I think with the masks, like the drugs, we want to do the right thing. We want to help. And my opinion is that sometimes we want to help so bad that we just have to do something. Yeah. We have to do something. I don't know what to do, but we've got to do something. I think I may have...
well, that would fall under the moral and social society standards, right? With the face mask.
Or what are you going to do?
Who makes that call?
Okay, well, let's play this out. Okay, John, are you wearing a mask? I'm not wearing a mask. And let's say that I was exposed to COVID. I'm not wearing a mask. And I cough on you, and now you get it, and you die. Was that assault with a deadly weapon? Now was there a victim? You know?
Yeah.
So did that escalate? But then to me, and this is where it gets really hairy, like a drunk driving.
Yeah.
Like you could sit here and listen to me say, okay, Alton, well, so you think it's okay for somebody to just go get hammered at a bar and then drive home? Hey, he made it. Victimless crime. And even me, I'm sitting here going, well, no. But, so it's hairy.
Okay, but drinking and driving, there's only one thing that could really come out of this. Nothing but bad, right? I think, in my opinion, with the mask situation, though, it's you're choosing to not wear it because you might expose yourself more, because we've gone over the studies that say wearing a mask increases your chance as the wearer to catch COVID. So you're either going to wear it to protect yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, to protect others, or you don't wear it because you want to protect yourself. And you trust it.
But I don't care. I just don't.
Whereas drunk driving, it's like you drink, you drive. You're either going to hit somebody or you're not, you know, based on whether you get home. But you're still taking that big risk.
Yeah. And
you don't have another, like, drunk driving is not going to increase your driving ability.
That's very true.
There's only side effects.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's claiming that. And I think that is where I struggle, but I think about what's the consequences and the risk. Like if someone's doing crack, like what's statistically really, what are the odds that they're going to come break into my house and like steal my stuff? Is that a high percentage? Now, somebody slamming down, 10 shots of whiskey and then driving 10 miles home.
Yeah.
Like statistically, how many times can you do that without wrecking? And when you wreck, when you have a 5,000 pound truck and you smash into my old little Pontiac, man, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, when you look at the consequences and statistics there and the risk, it's great enough that I am in support of, okay, Alton, you can argue and say that's a victimless crime, but the risk is too high.
Okay, let me go back.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking many thoughts in my head while we're doing this.
I can only think one at a time at best.
So back to the prostitution. You said you don't condone it, but would you be for or against abolishing those laws?
There's also laws, and then there's the enforcement of the laws, right? Like you brought up the sodomy thing.
Yeah.
It's not enforced. Honestly, right. I don't really care if it's on the books, if it's not enforced. I would like to know, why was it on the books? Like which politician was, or who was lobbying for that law? But like, I'm not going to lobby it for taking it off the books. But look, if you tell me there's whatever, like, I don't know, 1 out of 5 people are sitting in the county jail that I'm paying for because they paid for prostitution.
Yeah.
I got to start looking at that. Like, how much is is the county paying to keep these people in there? I'm like, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's listed as a Class B misdemeanor in the state of Texas.
Well, I'm just saying, but is it being enforced, and how much is it costing? That's what I would look at if it's not like if you start looking, and I didn't pull these up, and maybe you did, John, but if you start looking at the statistics for how many like drug offenders are sitting in the county and in the prisons for
there's a lot,
like literally smoking pot, it's huge, and the cost of that is insane, and that's why. Well, it's probably one of the reasons why people have said, let's do something different.
Well, out of the statistics I started the show with, the majority are drug-related offenses.
Yeah. And I just can't. I would love to see some statistics. And again, I'm not talking about morals here, because how I feel about whether or not there should be a law really has nothing to do with how I feel about that infraction or not, right? Like,
well, so let's go back to those scholars that say, well, these things indirectly affect others, like where you talked about the drugs tend to lead to other crimes that affect others and blah blah blah. Let's argue that other point though. You invest in the stock market. Is that gambling? Should you be charged for that? Because however much you spend on stocks and then lose, that affects your family, right?
Well, there's tons. It turns out that there's consequences in life,
right?
And that things affect things.
Okay, let me give you another one. What about fast food? Fast food makes you unhealthy. Your medical bills will go up.
Sure does.
You might die younger.
Yeah.
Right? Cigarette smoking.
New York, they banned straws, or California banned straws.
Yeah, don't get me started on that bullshit.
I'm just saying, like, at what point do we just go, this is kind of crazy?
Yeah. But
no, like, let's talk about divorce. Are there any statistics that say divorce is bad for a family? I think we could.
Why are drugs illegal, but tobacco for cigarettes is not? You're smoking cigarettes, obviously it causes harm to your body and to others.
That's true.
How is, that's not a not a victimless crime.
40,000 people a year in the United States die of secondhand smoke. Right? Like, I'm looking at that.
So that's not a victimless crime. Why is that legal, but marijuana or any of these other ones are not?
Well, I hear your point. I'm not arguing either way on that. But I'm glad that you brought it up, because it's
like, if I get lung cancer, I better be able to sue the heck out of the state of Texas for not enforcing something like that, right?
Well, but I'm just not even on that boat. I'm on the boat of like, look, we're all going to die. There's risk in everything. I do risky things. And if something happens, it's not someone else's fault.
Okay, but if they kill me with their secondhand smoke, then you're not going to have a podcast, buddy. So let's go back to that.
Well, then maybe you should exercise your own responsibility and not be around them.
Well, that's hard to do sometimes. What about the kids in the back seat because the parents are smoking in the front seat? Do they have a right? Do they have any choice?
Man. Well, here's the thing. I think some of it would get into the grass of or the weeds of how are you going to enforce that. Okay, so let's take I'm glad that you said that, because that's me. That's me. That's me growing up in the back seat.
Oh, I went to my dad's. You spoke with the kids in the
car? No, I was the kid in the back seat with the parents smoking. I went over to my dad's this weekend, and I'm in there, and he's smoking. I walk outside, and I kissed Heather, and she's like, "You taste like you were smoking." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "You mean I smell like I was smoking?" And she goes, "No, you taste like you were smoking." And so I hear what you're saying. So let's rewind that back to, I'm a kid, cop sees parents smoking, and he's like, "Those stupid parents, I'm going to get them."
Yeah.
He goes, takes my parents to jail. Now, John, you're paying for my parents to sit in jail.
Well, so I don't know that
You're paying for CPS.
I don't know that
I'm an orphan. I'm in foster care.
I would change probably how that goes about.
The parents were trying to kill me.
Because you can even do that with the seatbelt,
Sure.
right? So the kids aren't
wasn't
smart
in the
enough.
booster seat?
They're still learning.
Murderer.
They're still learning. So you drive around and they're not in a seatbelt, then they have no chance of surviving in a car wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, so
take them out, put them in foster care.
well, I don't know that I would go to that extreme.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like, how are you enforcing these things?
Well, I mean,
And again, as I have been clear to say, and if I have not articulated it, I'll articulate it again. COVID-19. Sometimes the response to the problem is just worse than the problem. And sometimes you just, and I'm not saying we should give up, but sometimes you just can't solve these problems. Like drinking and driving. Let's solve that. Prohibition. How'd that work?
no.
Right? At some point, you just have to say, we just can't control everything. And I don't mean that in a we should give up and just not care about anything. I'm just saying we should pick our battles.
Right.
You know, and I would be more in favor of asking the question, well, why is everyone smoking?
Right.
Let's educate that. You know, let's figure out like what are the cause of some of these things.
So while looking this up, you know, this I actually found, what was it? Southeastern Missouri State University came out with some of this statistical backing. It actually shows that enforcement of victimless crimes or victimless laws has actually been associated with police discretion and increased police corruption. And it says it also may be associated with the violation of civil liberties against the citizens.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So you're also increasing the jail population too.
Well, look,
Why?
I remember
Can't we do this a different way?
I remember growing up, whenever I would drive through Martindale, Texas, there was a cop, and everybody knew you cannot go, if it's 45, you can't go 46. Anyway, it turns out that this guy, or whatever, Martindale cops, were pulling people over for speeding. It was a speed trap. Everybody knew there's somebody pulled over there every time you drive down the road, and it's like 65 to 45, so you got to jam on your brakes, and if you don't, boom, you're nailed. Well, it turns out that this guy was pulling people over for speeding. This is like a 4-lane, highway out in the cornfield. It just,
Yeah.
Anyway, over 85% of the city's revenue was from speeding. And then it turns out that they got in big trouble, and I don't know the specifics, but it was like there's some ordinance or some law or something that you can't have more than 15% of your revenue or whatever come from speeding violations.
Shirts, Texas had that going on, right?
Well,
They had a big speed trap.
Well, I don't know about Shirts, but Martindale I know because they got into big trouble, and now it's not really a speed trap anymore because it was abuse of power, and it was, in my mind, capitalizing on these laws where there's no victim, and it just creates this revenue generator for the government, which I'm not a fan of. And that's where, in my own head, you get this defund the police concepts, is because you see things like that. Like, well, number one, it's like just abuse of power, but it's a whole lot easier to see abuse of power when there's no victim, right? When there's a victim, everyone's calling the cops, right? We want the cops to be there when there's a victim. It's like, I saw a meme that said, defund the police, right? This guy's holding the sign with the defund the police, and then a guy runs up and punches him right in the nose. It's like, who are you going to call? Right? You're either on your own with this guy now, but see, now we have a victim. And so for me, just to kind of summarize where I'm at here, I want to bring up the topic of what are our laws and where is the victim? And when you're approaching either defund the police, wear a mask, wear a seatbelt, look at it from who's the victim here? Why is this law in place? And just go down that road so that you can kind of, think about how you're approaching these things and understand, like, does this actually make sense because it's a law? Do we just blindly follow it? Or can we decide that maybe it was good when it was made or something, but maybe now it's not that applicable?
Well, and I hate to throw in the race card here, but let's also look at, the citizens that actually influence all of this are lawmakers. And most of them tend to be white, middle-aged, upper class, and Protestant, right? So who does that mean it normally affects? The poor and minorities. So, we want to start talking BLM, the Black Lives Matter group. Okay. I would say this is probably one of the number one things we got to readjust is these victimless crimes.
For sure.
You can take, for example, back in late 1800s, early 1900s, there were a lot of white Protestants that actually considered alcohol a sin, and they disliked a whole bunch of Catholics and immigrants. Uh-huh. Well, they took it away. And then, of course, it also affected the poor. So that's just one example. I mean, what are the truths behind some of these other ones that affect all these other? Obviously recently they've said that the drug issue is predominantly hurting the African-American community. So clearly you need to relook at that.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the quote war on drugs, you have to ask if we're winning. And again, I'm not pro drugs. I'm just I'm pro freedom. And if there's not a victim, we got to kind of,
And here's the other problem. Victimless crimes are just like traffic violations as well. And police officers get to use their discretion across the board. And I think that's where, this corruption and everything can really manifest is when there's so much of that discretion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Get rid of the marijuana laws. Then there's no question. There's no discretion. You won't get written up.
Yeah. It's
City of Austin just passed it. They're not going to, the City of Austin will not cite you, arrest you, or anything for personal possession.
Well, here's the other thing. Like, what if I wanted to get my windows tinted? Oh, that's legal. You can't do that.
So they file that under the safety of the police officers because when they stop you, they can't see.
Me rolling my eyes. Give me a break.
Well, put yourself in their shoes. If you can't see what's going on when you walk up to the car, aren't you going to be fearful and you're automatically going to be on edge with your gun in your hand, possibly?
Okay, then if it's such a safety risk, then why do all the cops tint their windows?
Well, they're normally not getting pulled over by each other.
So it's okay for the cops, but it's not okay for the people. That is the definition of tyranny.
They get away with not using turn signals.
Why are they pulling people over?
They speed.
Why are they pulling people over? Why'd you pull him over? Because he didn't use a turn signal? Because he, hit the reflector in the road, in the lane? See, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, you have these things build on each other and, sit in your car, announce, hey, roll down your windows, but honestly, like, I think that there's a lot of things that police have too much power, like I agree. It's kind of sketchy, but, I don't know on that one. I think it's, it just doesn't even make sense. Like a van doesn't even have to have windows. You got to start like regulating that now vans have to have windows because cops are scared. Like at some point we just have to say, I mean, some things are bad, but it doesn't mean that we just need to go and enforce everything that's wrong. And some of these things maybe should be civil and not criminal. You know what I mean? Like maybe you should be sued for whatever, secondhand smoke, but not necessarily thrown in jail. I mean, and I'm not even saying that I'm for that. I'm just saying like maybe that's a way that you could still address some of these issues and not send people away. But the problem is, okay, you got poor guy here who gets in trouble drinking and driving. Yeah. You're just going to fine him because maybe he he didn't actually hit anybody. He was just drunk driving, and now we're gonna fine him $50,000. But what if he doesn't have 50,000? Yeah. And that's where it's like, oh, just throw him in jail. He can't pay. And it's like, well, now I'm paying because he couldn't pay. What? Yeah. Now why am I getting fined because this guy was drinking and driving? And so I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but hopefully that's been some thought provoking commentary for you.
So let's answer the question. So should we dismantle all victimless crimes? And we'll try that.
It's time for our deciding factor.
All right, let me try to go out this. I'll let you finish it up.
All right, I'll wrap it up.
So I really do think we need to reconsider all of these. The fact that we're letting each state make up their own social decisions on these different topics, I think it's kind of crap, to be honest with you. I don't think you should determine, is gambling illegal? So when I look at most of these crimes, gambling, drugs, sex, the prostitution, sodomy, things like that. I mean, to me, all of this screams out a religious view in your morals. Mm-hmm. Okay, guys, the first thing about religion is you do not judge others, right? You need to be worrying about yourself. Yeah, you can spread the word, but I can't force you to do anything. And the Constitution also allows you your freedoms to do a lot of different things. I disagree with a lot of these victimless crimes. I think you should eliminate a lot of them, or you really need to restructure them. Now, things like the certain drugs, yeah, I'm not for abolishing all the drug laws, but let's relook at how they're structured. There's some of the northeastern states. Mm-hmm. They actually have facilities where you can go shoot up with heroin and things like that. Okay. They're around medical people that can help them out. They're allowed to do what they're going to do anyways, but it's supervised.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, of course, there's that issue of, are they going to commit crimes after it to get money to do whatever? That's just bad people.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to ever stop that.
About me, I'm going to chug coffee and then go and do bad things.
Yeah. So I really think it needs to be looked at. To me, even 22%, the statistic that I gave you at the beginning of the show, that's way too much. I don't even know what that number should be at, but I would think it'd be in a single digit, right? That seems a little more reasonable to me. But I don't know. Let's worry more about the more serious stuff. We've got way too much crap to worry about, and too much help we can give to other people during, especially this pandemic and all the crap that's surrounding it. So, but especially things like seatbelts. Now, seatbelts, I think it should be required for people under 18 who haven't formed their minds, their brain cells and all that. So don't get me wrong. I don't think fully dismantling, but absolutely need to reduce it. And I would like to see the police focus on more important things like protecting our kids and things like that. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think for me, just to point out an area we can disagree on, I love the idea of localities making their own decisions, because I think that it's better for us to fit in where we want to live, right? Like if I want to smoke pot, then maybe I should just move to Colorado because there's other people similar to me and we can all accept that, right? So it's part of our culture on a small scale. Whereas if you want to be around people who are won't tolerate that, then fine. But
to move is really hard.
Well, I agree with that.
Especially for the poor. We're going back to the poor.
Well,
and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
I hear what you're saying. My point is that I'm not saying like, oh, if you don't like it, move. I'm saying the benefit of having Like Texas is normally a Republican state. Well, if that's the case, then maybe this is a good place to be if you share those type of ideals. If you're typically more a Democrat mindset, then there are states and places that have those type of views that you might enjoy living there more.
But take Texas, for example. It's been red forever. And now it's a toss-up between blue or red. So now people that have this Republican mindset are now having to deal with all the blue ideologies and mindsets. So why,
I hear what you're saying. My point is that, look, I grew up in a small town and that happened. Sure. More people came in and they kind of ran out the culture that was there. I don't have an answer for that. But if you're not controlling it locally, I don't see how you can even affect it. Like I was hearing the other day that it was like some club. I forget what the club was. But they were saying like they started a whole neighborhood and like the HOA, like if you couldn't buy a house if you weren't like it was like a Freemason or like one of those things. And I'm all for that. Like I'm all for restaurants that don't let black people in them. I'm also all for restaurants that don't let white people in them or girls or guys. I don't care. If I want to start a restaurant and not serve guys and only chicks can eat there, I'm all in on that. Like freedom. To me, that's not bad. It's just like I started my own business, right? Now, schools, that's different because that's government, right? But I don't think that we should just vote everything in Washington because that's dangerous. Now you've got people who live thousands of miles away from you making decisions for what you do. And that's a problem, which is why we have local governments so that we can find a culture that fits more. And if it gets too out of control, then I hate to say it, but maybe it's time to go somewhere else. Like you look at Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, like maybe it was time for Lot to check out. If he didn't like the way they were doing things, maybe you got to go.
So I may have missed it. Where do you stand on victimless crimes and should we dismantle them all?
So I said all that because I like the idea of the locality making these decisions because we can all decide on our, kind of minute scale.
But only the lawmakers get to make that choice. You don't get to choose.
Well, that's why we have to vote the people in that support, and put forward good candidates. But do I support the dismantling of victimless laws? I do. Now, if you put a list in front of me, 100%, I'm going to have a caveat with some, right? Yeah. It's not a blanket statement that, just everything that we can put in that box, just toss it. No. But I think that there is a high percentage of these that we could just toss out. I'm not a fan of like some people, we can just legalize marijuana and then tax it. And then taxes. No, stop taxes. Stop laws. Like I'm about shrinking the government, not getting it fatter. So this to me is like trimming the fat. And I like what you said about maybe dismantling may be the wrong term in some cases, but reevaluating what if there are better ways to address these other than just giving individual humans the ability to arrest and jail people when no one else is being hurt. But I think that the police should serve the people. And I've been a quote victim in like a neighborhood. I know sometimes like people will go too fast in a neighborhood and then just neighborhood people will be putting pressure on the police. Like you need to patrol my neighborhood because there's all these people going way too fast. And so the cops just set up speed traps, right? And it's like, hey man, there's kids here, like enforce it. And in my mind, no matter where you stand on the speeding through neighborhoods, like that's what the police are supposed to be doing in the broadest sense is, hey, this is what all the people do. Like, think about the old Westerns. Yeah. You have the sheriff, right? Sheriff, everybody loves the sheriff. Sheriff's just chilling. And when, so-and-so gets too drunk in the bar, he goes, all right, man, it's been a little too much. We're going to throw you in the slammer for the night, and you're going to cool down for the next couple days, and then, go back to doing your thing. Yeah. He was serving the community, because the community's like, man, dude got drunk in the bar, and he's out just popping off rounds in the middle of the street. Sheriff, get over here. He's putting us all like, and so at some point these things escalate. And I don't know if I made it clear, but there's a lot of fat that we can cut out. I think we should. I think we should think about that. And I think that our generation is thinking in this way. I hope that we've articulated it a little more, maybe simplified some of it to make it clear on how to make the decision about how we are approaching these laws in our communities and our cultures and our morals, and how that separation of church and state come in.
Yeah. Well, I think this was good. I'm glad we talked about this. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribing, liking, commenting. It's always good for us. It points us in different directions, and
be sure to share this with some people who love those victimless laws.
Tell them to listen to all 1 hour plus of this. And and then don't forget, if you want to send hate mail, send it to Alton at...
That's right.
All right. Say bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.